section, we're going to talk about the theory of caregiver burden, which was originally developed by Stephen Zaret and has been researched by many, many people. Caregiver burden is now a very established idea in study of caring for frail. So what is caregiver burden? Caregiver burden is the strain that's experienced by a person who cares for a chronically ill, disabled, or older family member. Now, you say to yourself, well, how is this a theory? Everybody knows that it's stressful to take care of somebody. Caregiver burden is the actual strain they feel. It's the person's perception of how hard it is. And it turns out that that perception predicts how depressed, anxious, distressed a person is going to feel more than the actual amount of care provided. So in other words, caregiver burden is not trying to measure how many hours a person spends taking care of an older person or how hard that care is. Are they having to clean up diapers versus only making dinner, right? It's not trying to figure out objectively how hard it is to take care of the person you're taking care of. This is subjective. This is the strain that a person is feeling. So two people could care for someone, each care for someone with very similar disabilities, very similar needs, spend a very similar amount of time, and yet one person feels much more burdened than the other, right? So caregiver burden is trying to measure the subjective feeling of this is hard for me, right? Rather than objectively, how hard is it? How heavy are you, a person are you lifting, for example? No, it's do I feel burdened and stressed by this experience? So why is caregiving stressful? Well, the time devoted to caring for a frail, disabled elderly person tends to be between 10 and 20 hours every week, and that's on top of a person's other responsibilities. So it's like a pretty steady part-time job. And women tend to put in more hours than men when they are the caregivers. In addition to the time, there's the emotional strain. It is hard to witness a parent's or a spouse's decline. To sit and watch someone that you love get sicker and weaker is hard. The role reversal is very difficult. Your mom changed your diaper, and now you may have to be changing hers, right? Or she fed you, and now you're having to feed her. She took care of you when you were sick, and now you're taking care of her. And especially for some of those intimate care tasks like giving someone a bath or changing a diaper, it feels like, I shouldn't be doing this. This is someone who is an authority figure, is a dignified adult, and it feels bad to be doing some of these babying kind of tasks. And believe me, it feels bad for the older person as well. Adults feel badly about no longer being able to bathe themselves, for example. It's embarrassing, it's humiliating. So that role reversal is very difficult for both parties. Caregiving can become a 24/7 responsibility. If a person has dementia, they're forgetful, they're confused, it's not safe to leave them alone for a minute. At certain stages in the process of dementia, the person doesn't sleep well anymore. They could get up in the middle of the night and wander off. So you're on call 24/7. That's why we're going to talk about how it is impossible for one person to be a sole caregiver. Everybody needs help. And then there can be role conflict, right? If you are taking care of children, if you have a job, you have a spouse, you have other activities, all of these things are in conflict. You need to be at work, but you need to be at your mom's house, but you need to be at your kid's school. It can become overwhelming. What do caregivers find most stressful? I talked about the things that we assume are going to be stressful, right? I talked about changing a diaper. I talked about bathing a person. I talked about lifting a heavy person. But when you ask people who are providing care, they say that those are not the most difficult things. The most difficult things are behavior problems, right? Dealing with an older person who is confused and therefore does crazy things, takes their clothes off, runs out without a coat in the winter, gets lost, is inappropriate in public. Watching their mental decline, watching someone you respect who can't remember things anymore, can't do simple mental tasks anymore. Disturbed sleep, needless to say, is tough. You have to get up for work in the morning and mom is waking, or dad is waking you up in the middle of the night. That's very difficult. And people who live together with the elder they're caring for, not surprisingly, report a lot more stress than people who just come to visit and do chores and then go home. So how do we reduce caregiving stress? How do we help caregivers? How do we relieve some of that burden? Well, teaching effective coping strategies, right? It's possible for a person who is a caregiver to learn better coping strategies, right? Better ways to deal with the stress. And that's something that a professional counselor can work with the family members on developing better coping skills. Social support, just having other people there to listen to you, to back you up, sharing some of that responsibility of caregiving with other family members. Getting paid help. A lot of people think there's stigma attached. You know, I should do it myself. It's my family member. No person can do this alone, and paid help is very important. If you can get insurance to pay for it, social services agencies to send somebody, that's great. Spending some of the older person's money on care, again, it's going to be money well spent. Having a flexible working environment, people who are able to work from home some days have a much easier time with caregiving than a person who has a job that's very rigid in terms of hours. And of course, community resources, a senior center, a daycare center for elders, respite care where you can, get a few days off. Any resource, educational resources, support groups, any resources in the community can really help reduce that burden of care. I didn't want to put this section of the module out there and make it seem like caregiving is just this endless, stressful, bleak time. There are rewards. There are positive things that you get from caring for someone that you care about. The pride in accomplishing something challenging. The feeling of giving back, right? Of reciprocating the love that you've gotten from a spouse, a parent, all your life. Spending that quality time with your loved one. And there is the potential for family to resolve conflicts and go closer as a result, both with the person you're caring for and with the other members of the family.